a lot softer than in person, so I apologize. But welcome, council. Hope you had a fantastic day and that everything is well with you and your families. We welcome any of the public who have joined us this evening, and glad you've taken the time to. Person, so I apologize. But welcome, council. Hope you had a fantastic day and that everything is well with you and your families. We welcome any of the public who have joined us.
Sorry, Mayor. We had too many screens open. The YouTube was re-going, so we're good now.
All right. Do I need to re-welcome everyone, John? Are we good?
We're good.
All right. Thank you for fixing that. Like I say, welcome to the public. We always enjoy having you with us and hope you'll feel free to make comments during our public comments portion of the meeting. Because we are having primarily a Zoom meeting, and we do have, I think, Council Member Dalpaz and John down at the city offices, but we've encouraged the public to join us by Zoom, and therefore I will read the required statement regarding the determination of our city regarding public meetings without an anchor location. Once again, pursuant to code section 59-2-407, as the mayor of North Ogden, I've determined that conducting an electronic meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who might be present at the anchor location. And gratefully, it looks like the pandemic is calming down a little bit, so hopefully we'll be able to get together again soon. This determination is based upon the code changes in 59-2-407 approved by the Utah legislature regarding the Open Meetings Act, COVID-19 cases, and the need for caution in people meeting together. The North Ogden City meetings of our council, North Ogden City, for the remainder of this month will be held electronically, and we will not have a physical location. All attendees will connect remotely, and links for public participation are available on the North Ogden City website. So with that reading, we'll now proceed into our agenda. I believe our invocation or thought or moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Swanson. So at his leisure, he has the opportunity to select from those options. Councilmember Swanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Two thoughts tonight. One's a little humorous. We'll start with that one. And the thought is this: when you realize that 1970 and 2022 are as far apart as 1970 and 1918, and you just need to take a minute. I saw that earlier this week, and it was a little striking. Now, on the more serious side, a social psychologist that I like to follow says the following. His name is Adam Grant. Adversity isn't always a test to conquer. Sometimes it's a struggle to endure. Resilience is not a race to bounce back from hardship. It is a commitment to keep going in the face of hardship. All of your scars may not make you stronger, but they do remind you of your strength. I thought that was fitting for the challenges that we have faced in the last couple of years and the challenges that we continue to face, that we may not conquer the adversity, but we can certainly move forward through it and struggle to endure and practice our resilience. With that, will you join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance?
And Council, if you would mute, and then John, if you'd put up the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanson, for that thought and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll now proceed with the rest of our agenda. Before we get into discussion on the minutes, Council, hopefully you've all had a chance to review the agenda this evening. In doing so, have you concluded that you have any conflicts of interest, perceived or real, that you'd like to disclose this evening? I don't see any, so we'll proceed along with item number 2. Susan, normally I'm not sure I had a chance to review these minutes in advance this time, but normally I do. So council, if you found anything in these minutes that need to be amended, please so state, but I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes of the November 23rd, 2021 council meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second. I second that.
A motion, a second. Is there any discussion or amendments on the minutes? Seeing none, good job, Susan. All in favor of approving these minutes, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the action to approve the December 14th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I saw a just maybe a little thing that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
It was on page 9.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we do that during discussion?
In discussion, but do you want to make a
Yeah.
motion to approve them and then discuss it?
Well,
Because-
that's the new procedure that was recommended, and no one has told me otherwise, so.
Okay, that's fine then.
All
So
right,
moved.
second. Second. Any discussion? Now, Councilmember Ekstrom.
Okay, yes. This was just a little dangler that was on page 9. It says Mayor Berube then noted he has heard from, and then it goes into Mayor Berube. So anyway, there's just kind of a break there. I'm not sure, it was kind of dangled. I don't know if the actual what he noted he has heard from was in the next paragraph, but there's just that statement that's kind of dangling right there. So that was the only thing that I found in that one.
Okay, so Councilmember Swanson, with the correction of those minutes, does your motion still stand?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Are there any that object to that approval? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the approval of the council meeting minutes that were held on December 23rd. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
So moved, Mayor.
So moved by Councilmember Severing and a second by Councilmember Swanson. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 5, which is public comments. John, if you would please watch on Zoom for those who would like to make a comment this evening. I would remind those, please, to make their comments succinct within 5 minutes, which is in our current council procedures. And if you would state your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden, and the best way to do that is to raise your hand. And John will call on you. John, would you watch?
Yep, we don't have any hands at this moment. Oh, we do have one now from, their name is Peggy.
All right, Peggy, if you would state your name and full name, and if you're a resident of North Ogden, and proceed, please.
So I've never attended one of these, so I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. I'm not sure if this is where I do this, but my name is Peggy Ashworth. I'm a resident of North Ogden, and we had our mailbox hit, and would like you to review the policy you currently have regarding repairing mailboxes that are hit by city snowplows.
Okay, I did see, I believe, an email on that particular subject.
Correct. Good.
I think we do have a policy in place. The only problem is, I think, our policy is we repair those mailboxes as hit, but currently we have an $800 limit. John, I'm assuming that's an ordinance. What would we need to do to readdress that for Peggy?
So it is a resolution. And so the council would need to adopt a new resolution if you wanted to increase that amount.
And we would have to put that on the agenda prior to passing that
Correct.
resolution?
Yes.
We can have a discussion on that later tonight, council. No decision made this evening because it's not on the agenda. So at the conclusion of our meeting, Peggy will have a discussion about what approach maybe we could take in the resolution, but we won't be able to make a decision tonight because it's not on the agenda.
That's okay.
But thank you, and I believe we did see your email that came in, and very well done. Thank you for sending that to us.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to hearing more about it then.
Stay tuned for our discussion at the end of the meeting.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. John, anything else?
No other hands at this moment.
We'll wait just a few moments to see if someone else raises their hand. And then we'll proceed with our agenda. None, John?
No hands.
All right, let's proceed with item number 6 on our agenda this evening, which is a discussion or action to consider an ordinance annexing 11.114 acres located at approximately 1500 North, 150 East. Susan?
Mayor and Council, you've heard this annexation as it's come before you when it was first brought in by the petitioner. Dan Birch was initially submitted the annexation petition for Howard W. Cheney on November 18th for, as you stated, the 11.114 acres located at 1500 North 150 East. The council received and accepted the petition on November 30th. It's also gone through the Weber County Surveyor's Office and passed that. It fits within our city's annexation declaration policy. The petitioner is requesting a zoning of R4, which the Planning Commission made a recommendation of that on December 15th, 2021. The City Council also received a notice of certification on January 4th. And the public hearing was noticed, and we had a 30-day protest period, which the protest period ended yesterday at 5, and there were no protests. However, there is Jason Rainey, the city's culinary water superintendent, has some comments he would like to also make regarding this annexation. As we, when I asked the entities for their input on whether, kind of give them where the idea of the new location would go, they give me their feedback. So if Jason is on, if he's available to speak right now.
Okay, this is probably regarding entitlements, regarding available entitlements in that area. Jason, are you with us?
I am.
Why don't you give us your thoughts?
Mayor and council, Susan reached out to us with the annexation request back in the fall. We've been reviewing our water, I guess, if you will, with staff, with Dave and I think John's aware of this, but we've been reviewing the number of committed lots that we have available already with some of those development agreements that are in place. And I think our water rights are good. We have adequate water rights to service more moving forward, but our supply and our storage is where we're getting close to needing to maybe have a discussion about how much density can go in, how quickly, and just because of the number of lots we currently have already on the peeper lots, if you will, to the water system. So not knowing how quickly any of those other building lots are going to keep building, before we start adding additional land to service.
those are good points, Jason, and I know that we've had numerous discussions making sure that we get the infrastructure in place, that we don't fall behind, that we have the infrastructure in place prior to, building an annexation. So I know we do have a plan in place to expand that water tank and do some things, but if I'm hearing you correctly, you're concerned right now, not knowing the timing of already approved lots, that if we have the ability to properly service this annexation at this time. Is that a correct conclusion of your comments?
Yes, I think depending on the zoning, I guess that's approved. I've talked with Dan Birch, and we talked before they purchased that property about, what the zoning is now versus what they're going to request if it was single family or multifamily. And so that's kind of moving forward. I had indicated that we weren't 100% positive about the multifamily just because of how much more demand there is on the system. Storage mostly. I think the production's okay at this point, but that's kind of the discussion I wanted to have, was just making sure, if they can phase into it, if there is a higher density that may be approved. That's really not my decision, but to tell them no on the annex would probably not be what I would recommend. But however, maybe moving forward, we just need to know, what their zoning could be and where they would, at what point they would need that service,
Those are good points, Jason. I think they're requesting R4 zoning, which is also a little bit different than the proposed land use map. I don't know if the applicant is with us tonight, but I've heard that perhaps there may be some deferral, but I believe, Susan, that we have to at least hold the public hearing tonight.
Correct. The developer's not looking for a decision tonight. They're even looking for us to postpone it to another meeting, but we would have to hold the public hearing to kind of work through some of those things.
Jason, we really appreciate that, because we know the water situation is critical, that we do have the water rights, but we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure planned and coordinated with the building, and there is a lot of activity down there. So anything else, Jason, you'd like to add?
No, I think that's my only concern, was just, how much density, how quickly, and we've just, like I say, we've got those projects in the works. We're just not really ready yet. So we're working on it. But yeah, that was the only question I wanted to bring up, was how quickly and how many, I guess, do we know that yet? It's kind of hard to, in my mind, say, yeah, I can service that, not knowing how many lots are going to be approved down there. So,
well, then not knowing how quickly the other approved lots will move, also a lot of moving pieces, but we appreciate your input there, and we think it's very valuable and very timely. So thanks for all you do for our city.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Susan, back to you.
Yeah, like I stated, we can move into that public hearing portion if we want to hear from the public. And I know Brandon Bell is also available from the planning department if there was any questions on kind of what the planning commission had decided on the recommendation of the R4. You're welcome to speak with him. The developer is also available, but I would say let's start with that public hearing.
Yeah, I think that's important, but I think it would be essential if the developer wants this postponed, because I think there are a lot of questions. Then it'd be nice for him to let us know, so we don't take a lot of discussion at this point in time with planning commission and zoning, etc. So with that, council, I will open the public hearing regarding this annexation. Proposed of 11.114 acres located at approximately 1500 north and 150 east. So the public hearing is now open. If there was anyone that would like to comment from the public, now would be the time to do that.
We
John?
do have a raised hand from Stephanie Casey.
All right, let's hear from Stephanie Casey.
Hi, this is Stephanie Casey, North Ogden resident. I'm just getting home from work and jumping on. So I'm trying to figure out where on Washington this is. And I'm wondering, I guess, is it a viable spot for commercial? I could be far off. I was scrambling to find maps to see where this was because I've had a crazy day. I don't know. I just wonder, as we're looking at zoning and Washington Boulevard and high density, we've already got, the Patriot Point coming in, Cooperstown, and the concern of water is definitely hearing that that's already a concern. Yeah, I just would appreciate more information on that. And I guess I'm just trying to quickly jump in, and I apologize that I'm not as prepared as I would like to be. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so that's up there higher.
Yeah, it's below Washington Boulevard, I believe.
Okay. So yeah, definitely doesn't fit exactly what I was thinking of, but the concern for water, I definitely appreciate hearing that, especially again with those other two approved developments coming in, and Village at Prominence Point with all the apartments that are still going to be started and being built. So just a reminder of those and my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. John, do we have anyone else?
Not at this time.
Okay, seeing no further comments from the public, I'd be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Severing. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Vote is unanimous. I would like to hear from the applicant before we seek further discussion on this, if that's okay. John, is the applicant with us?
Yeah, Daniel Birch is on here, and I unmuted him, and he's unmuted himself, so we're good to go.
Mr. Birch, do you have some comments this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Berube and council and everybody else involved. Appreciate your time tonight. And also appreciate the public comment. Stephanie, thank you for your concern with the city. We too, as developers, obviously care about what we do in various cities and love to work closely with cities and try and really build together, So, and that's kind of part of why we've opted to obviously move forward with a public hearing, but maybe hold off on a vote. As in speaking with the planning and zoning, we really would like to hold off and basically kind of wait to see, or wait to work with the city after the new master plan goes into effect and try to kind of comply with what the city is looking to see down in this area. Is the biggest reason that we're kind of holding off right now. I know that there's some things kind of in the works, and we've got some things that we'd like to address as well, and so that's kind of the reason that we've asked to kind of hold off at this time.
Okay, Mr. Birch, thank you. And I know you've been very cooperative, and we appreciate that. And Council, you probably had a chance to look at the plan. Maybe not though, because it was submitted a little bit later, but there is some open space in regards to our concerns about higher density. And I think it would be good for the council to get some further information on what that open space may look like and its availability to certain residents or residents in the area. But the developer has asked that we postpone this action on annexation. Do you have any further questions, or would we seek a motion to postpone this item to a future meeting? Council? Councilmember Extra.
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion. I move that we postpone the decision on the annexation to a later date.
We have a motion to postpone. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dalpaz. Now would be the time for discussion before we take a vote. Councilmember Swanson, did you have any comments?
No, I was just going to make a motion.
All right. Any other comments or discussion? Council, at this point in time, we have a motion to postpone a vote on the annexation of this property. All those in favor of postponing this item, please say aye.
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 Are any opposed? Seeing none, we'll classify this as a unanimous vote to postpone, and thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom, for your motion. We'll now move on to item number 7, which is a discussion or action to consider a resolution amending the consolidated fee schedule. I think we have our finance director with us this evening, Jamie Jones. This would be in regards to resolution 02-2022. So Jamie, would you like to address the changes in the fee schedule for consideration by the council?
Am I on?
Yes.
Great.
Donna, welcome, Jamie.
Great. All right. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're back with the consolidated fee schedule again. Some items to be considered. Dave and his team put together under the building permit fee, some additional SWIP cleanup fees and fines. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to review. These are to enforce some frequently occurring issues going on in our city with the SWIP regulations. Each fine considers staff time, equipment, and other resources needed to comply with these requirements. I don't know if anybody has any questions for that. I don't know if Dave is on the phone to answer questions, but it seems to be more issues with concrete washouts and then kind of stockpiling of material and whatnot around these building sites. Okay, I'll move on. So under the North Shore Aquatic Center, we're looking to increase daily passes for the senior citizens and the military by 50 cents. We're also adding some consideration for adaptive needs, changing some times on the double dip for Mondays and Wednesdays, and also adding that to a half price. We're including the Ducky Dipper onto the fee schedule and then adding some group discount passes for the fitness program. And then for the police department, just a couple of things there. We're increasing the fee for incident reports from $10 to $25. And then eliminating 2 categories for animal licensing for the spayed and neutered or microchipped. The department feels that, well, they compared these fees to other surrounding cities, and North Ogden is really the only one offering the discounted animal licensing for those 2 categories.
Jamie, haven't we received quite a few increases from the county on the animal shelter? Also,
that's a great question. I don't know that.
I think we have, and I think that's part of the motivation for removing the dog neuter special and microchipped from $5 every license, and would basically be the $10 license.
Okay.
But we have had significant increases from the county animal shelter. So
we have, and we do have the chief here that could answer some of those questions too, Mayor.
I'm just glad I got my dog registered, who's neutered and sprayed and microchipped. Saved myself $5.
That's great. Looks like that's all that I have for the fee schedule changes.
Council, do we have a motion to approve this fee schedule, knowing that we'll have further discussion?
Mayor, I motion that we approve this fee schedule as presented by Jamie Jones.
Thank you, Councilmember Dowpaz. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Ekstrom. Council, now is the time for discussion. If you have any questions, recommendations, or concerns. May I express a little bit of a concern? I'm concerned that even though it's not significant, but it's just kind of a piling on for our military and senior citizens. I was wondering if we had to have a discussion about that. And also we're adding to, adaptive needs. A lot of those folks already struggle financially. I know we've challenged the Parks Department to increase revenues to make that an ongoing concern financially. I'm just wondering if I understood this right, we are giving other discounts for larger parties and then increasing fees to those who may have a harder time paying. I'd welcome any thoughts you may have on that. Councilmember Swanson, I see your hand up.
What is the adaptive needs $3 fee? Is that just the entrance fee?
So it's actually adding it as a discount.
Well, that's a discount?
Yeah, so there wasn't a discount for them prior to this.
Because this says daily passes, so how do we know that's a discount? Where did we miss that, John?
Because it's a new category. So normally they would have paid $6 for entrance as a North Ogden resident, and now they would pay $3.
Perfect, and their assistant gets in for nothing.
Correct.
And a military family who would pay $6 then now would pay $4?
Correct.
So that's a discount.
And well, we had military family in there prior. So their rate is going up by 50 cents and senior citizens as well, but they do currently get a discount over the normal rate.
But it'll still cost them more to come to the facility, right?
Correct.
What other questions, council? I don't see any. We do have a
Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Dowpaz.
I'm willing to amend my motion if you want to entertain that.
Council, would you like to entertain an amendment of the motion?
So I'm going to go ahead and amend the motion to approve the consolidated schedule, with the difference being that we don't raise the military rates or the senior citizen rates by 50 cents. So the consolidated schedule is good as it is, but then we just don't approve those increases to military and seniors.
Councilmember Dowpaz, before we take a vote on your amended motion or seek a second, John, on these discounts for groups, are those discounts or are those increasing?
We do have Tiffany here. She can answer, but I believe it's an additional discount for the fitness program.
I guess that's my question, council. Do we want to, maybe that offsets the change we just made on this group discount?
And Tiffany did just raise her hand, so I bet she's got a better answer than I just gave you, Mayor.
Well, okay, we'd love to hear from Tiffany.
Thanks, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, and thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Okay, so what we have here tonight, as John mentioned, is some cleanup and housekeeping on our end. So we've had a discount for adaptive needs and assistance, but it hasn't been listed properly on this consolidated fee schedule. So that was the addition there. A while back, the city council adjusted rates on a percentage basis, and it made it so that the dollar amounts of our fees were uneven. Things ended in cents or in nickels or dimes. And so we came back and made adjustments to that to even everything out so that we could use quarters at the facility and not have to have a lot of change. We missed evening out the senior citizens and I just lost the other one, the military family. So we took those two and evened those out a little bit better. And that's what should be showing here with both of those. Under, and I'll just go down through the list of the others. Under special events for Double Dip Mondays and Wednesdays, we adjusted that. Instead of reading 2 for the price of 1, it now reads $3.25, which is half off of the regular rate, not the resident discounted rate. So our policy at the facility is that we only allow 1 discount at a time. So you wouldn't come in and get a military and family discount and then a 2 for 1 discount. And so that clarifies how that double dip works on Monday and Wednesday nights from 6 to 8, is that it's just half off full admission as a single discount. And then the last one that's on there, 2 more that are on there. Ducky Dippers is actually a water nursery, for lack of a better word, for water introduction to kids who maybe have older siblings who are old enough to be in swimming lessons, but their parents are still there with their younger child and would like to introduce them to the water. And so that's all that is. It's a water nursery. It's a guarded water time for them to introduce their younger kids. We wanted to make sure to get that on the fee schedule. The 10 punch pass is for water fitness programs. And then to clarify, the 10 plus and 30 plus group discount, those probably need to be not tabbed. They shouldn't be listed under water fitness. So that's $5.50 as a discount if you bring in a group of 10 or more, and $4 if you bring in a group of 30 or more. So all of these are just housekeeping items. They're not really raising prices of anything other than evening out those dollar amounts.
So Tiffany, these are discounts that are already in place then, the 10 punch pass, the group discount for 30 and the 10, those are already discounts.
That's correct. So as we've gone through how our software system is set up, it's a little trickier to catch some of these discounts. So we've been working really hard to make sure that we have everything listed on the fee schedule that we have at the facility.
So help me understand just a little bit more, because this shows that it was $5 for like senior citizens and now it's $5.50, but you were talking about a rounding or something? Because
I do
it
that
says
as well. And so I will have to go and look back at that, because my understanding was that we took our rates and then I don't remember the percentage that was applied. It was during a discussion of credit card fees and recuperation for those. So there was an even percentage applied across the board and it made our dollar amounts uneven. And that's why we went back. And so I would have to check, and maybe I was operating off an older version of the consolidated fee schedule when I was providing these numbers to Jamie. But that's all that would have been doing, would be evening out those numbers.
Yeah, because if I'm reading this correctly, this does show an increase, right? Of 50 cents.
Correct.
But you're saying that's not the case.
It wasn't the intent, no.
So if that's not the intent, I guess, John, should we approve this fee schedule? Because based upon the information we see here, it would be increasing for senior citizens, and I believe also for military.
I think the way it sounds like is it would be a reduction if we don't change the schedule based on that modification of how we charge things.
Just clarify for me though, this is not a 50-cent increase for military and for senior citizens. This is the right price, not increasing their entrance fee.
Sorry, Tiffany, is that true? I'm just making sure that I'm not speaking out of turn.
That was my understanding, if I'm reading the schedule correctly.
Well, council, I guess we could proceed along as based upon, and I don't know, Councilmember Dalpaz, if you want to amend your motion to say we'll approve this as long as it's not an increase.
Well, Mayor, if it's not critical to get it approved tonight, we could postpone it, but then again, Jamie would have to come back and present. So let me amend my motion. So I'll amend my motion saying that we approve the consolidated schedule as presented by Jamie Jones, while Tiffany in the background confirms that these rates that are posted for senior citizens and military members are not an actual increase.
We have a motion. Councilmember Swanson, I see your hand up. You're going to correct us on Robert's rules here, I take it.
No, sir. I'm going to offer a substitute motion.
Okay,
And that motion would be that we postpone this until we have the actual figures in front of us. And we know exactly what we're talking about.
okay, I think it'd be important to get this back as quickly as possible because I think the other increases are justified. So John, would you get this back to us the next meeting with the correct information?
Yeah, we can do that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone on a substitute motion. Anyone willing to accept and second Councilmember Swanson's substitute motion?
I second it.
A second by Councilmember Severing. Do we have any discussion?
Hey, Mayor,
Councilmember Barker, please.
to throw in a correction to Robert's rules, weren't we supposed to say the resolution number in the motion when we're making these motions? But also, can we just approve the consolidated fee schedule minus the pool so that the police department can get their fees put in place?
Is this a second substitute
No,
motion?
it's a
we gotta-
question. It's a question whether we can do that or whether we can't.
I think we can. John, we could approve it under those conditions, right?
We could approve it, and we're in that fun range of Robert's rules where technically we would vote on if the substitute motion overrides the previous motion. And then if the answer to that is yes, then you would actually then vote on the substitute motion on whether or not you agree with it. So we're in a weird Robert's rule limbo where your first vote's going to be on whether or not the substitute motion takes priority, and then your second vote would be on whether or not you approve the motion that then.
So then we would turn down Councilmember Swanson's substitute motion by a vote of no?
If you said no, then it would turn down the substitute motion, and the original motion would be the motion you voted on.
We have in place on the table a substitute motion by Councilmember Swanson regarding ordinance number 2022-02. Do we have a?
It's a resolution 02-2022.
We'll get there. This is until we get to official here. I mean, frankly, Robert's rules. Okay, so we have a substitute motion. Do we have a second on Councilmember Swanson's substitute motion, or will it die for lack of a second?
Well, Mayor, I seconded it.
Do you want to withdraw your second, or do you want us to just vote no? Let's just vote on this. All in favor of Councilmember Swanson's substitute motion, say aye.
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 All those against Councilmember Swanson's motion, say aye.
This is against it?
Yes.
Yes, this
Aye.
would mean that you then could make your substitute
aye.
motion.
Aye.
We vote no.
Right.
So are you voting no, Councilmember Ekstrom? Because we have a
I
2-2
believe-
vote. Right now.
Well, it's a little bit hard with the language here of whether we're voting aye against it or just no. I think no is
No
clear.
would be fine.
but-
We have two
okay.
no's. Would you like to be a third no or a third yes?
I'll be a third no, and then we can move on to. Councilmember.
Okay, your motion is kindly declined, Councilmember Swanson. We now have an opportunity for another substitute motion by Councilmember Barker, if you would so like.
All right, I'll make a substitute motion that we approve the consolidated fee schedule minus the pool fees. That'll come back at a future date.
Can,
And that would be, by the way, Resolution 02-2022.
Correct.
Do we have a second on Councilmember Barker's motion?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? The motion is that we approve the schedule before us with the exclusion of things related to the military and the senior citizens charges. Everything else would be approved as on the schedule. Is that correct, Councilmember Barker?
I stated everything with the pool related just to make it
Okay,
clear.
then everything without the pool. Clarification. All right. Have any further discussion?
Mayor, can
Council-
you hear me?
Yes.
Mayor, it's Jamie. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk right now.
Well, with me being the mayor, yes, you're allowed to talk.
Okay, so
Some other mayor may not let you, but I will.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So I was able to look it up on sports sites, and Tiffany is correct. The military does say $4 and senior citizen says $5.50. So it is not an increase. It is an increase for senior citizen, not for military.
Okay, well, and
I don't know if that changes things, but that's where we're at now, so.
well, we do have a motion on there to approve everything but the aquatic center changes. So that it seems like the motion was not to approve the senior citizens anyway, so I'd probably have to come back. So the motion we're entertaining right now is approval of the fee schedule exclusive anything related to North Shore Aquatic Center under Resolution 02-2022. Any further discussion?
Well, I have a question.
But this would be the time.
Okay, so do we have a discrepancy between what is on our consolidated fee schedule and what is showing up on sports sites? Because that's a little bit of a problem. So I'm seeing what's marked out here. Is that an error of what has currently been on the fee schedule and it's different in sports sites and now we're just updating it?
I guess,
if we
yeah,
have the wrong
irrelevant.
crossed
Yeah,
out.
good question, but irrelevant to the motion right now. But your point is well taken. We might want to ask that correction after we vote on the motion, but good point. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, which is to approve the fee schedule with the exclusion of anything related to the North Shore Aquatic Center regarding Resolution 02-2022. Since this is a resolution, I will take a roll call vote. Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Yes.
and Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously in regards to Resolution 02-2022. Now, Councilmember Ekstrom, would you like to give instructions to make sure that everything lines up? Your question.
Yes, definitely. I would just want to make sure that the consolidated fee schedule, even the previous one, I think the confusion is coming of which previous one Tiffany is looking at versus the one we're looking at on the screen, and then making sure that it lines up with what it says on sports sites so that what's actually being charged is the same as what has been passed in council. So maybe just a little administrative cleanup there as well.
Yeah, so we'll get Tiffany on that, but I think it's clear that the council is not interested in increasing fees for military or senior citizens intentionally or unintentionally. So when we come back with the changes in the fee schedule for the North Shore Aquatic Center, if we can have those clarifications and also answer to Councilmember Ekstrom's questions. Thank you. We will now move on to our discussion on item number 8 on the agenda, which is a discussion or action to consider an ordinance to amend the propane retail sales requirements in the C2 zone. Our presenter will be Scott Hess, our planning director. I believe those of you who had the chance to review the packet, you'll see what the request is there. I think the only thing that wasn't in the packet, as I understand, John Call has suggested if the council approves this, that the tank is wrapped with his picture on it. So with that in mind, council, Scott, I think the council's had the staff report, which was very well done. So if you just give a brief overview of that, then we'll see if the council has questions. So Scott? John, is Scott with us?
He should be. I tried to promote him to a panelist. Well, it's not letting me, so I'm just going to try and put allowed to talk.
All right, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So appreciate that on the staff report. Planning Commission weighed in on this item. And in early January, we have applicant Philip Child, who owns the Ace Hardware here in town, just around the corner from City Hall, has long been a propane retail seller for the city. He was the applicant that assisted the city with developing the current ordinance that we have, and has since come back and requested that the city allow an increase in size to that propane tank. So he cited that he's generally selling propane to multiple cities, including Harrisville, Pleasant View, North Ogden, and Ogden. Staff did a review of the closest other retail propane sales, and they're approximately 4.5 miles away for one and 9 miles south in Ogden for another. And it appears that just based on the market, there's not a whole lot of interest out there in other convenience stores or other locations that could potentially be retail propane sales to pick this up and run with it. So on busy weekends, he's having multiple truck deliveries coming in to fill up the 500-gallon tank, and he feels that the city would be better served with a 1,000-gallon tank. The tanks themselves are essentially, they're not custom, they're general size. We have an example in the staff report of what one would be like, as well as an example from Clearfield City that shows a tank in ground at a Shell station, just to give you an idea of the size and scale. So the code request, the amendment request, would allow a 1,000-gallon tank, 20 feet tall. And there was some discussion at the Planning Commission about whether or not Mr. Child could put 2 500-gallon tanks next to each other, but there's a spacing requirement and then also a spacing requirement from a structure that just basically doesn't have enough room there, enough real estate over on the east side of his property to do that. So have an image in the staff report as well of the tank. He intends to paint this the same way. It would be earth tone, light brown color, the word propane on one side, which would be limited in size based on the ordinance, and no other changes. I'm happy to take any questions.
And Council, John did not request that it be wrapped with his picture. Just want to clarify that in case somebody thought that was the case. So hopefully, Council, you had a chance to review the staff report. Before us, you have the ordinance and the changes that would take place there. Do we have a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-05, which would amend this ordinance regarding retail sales in the C2 zone? Do we have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilmember Ekstrom.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-05, increasing amending the amount of propane, that size of tank that can be put on a commercial property C2.
Okay, we have a motion and the ordinance before us. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Swanson. Council, do we have any questions or discussion at this point? We have the applicant, if we'd like to hear from him. If there's no questions, no need to prolong it, but if there is, he's with us. We also have Mr. Hess that can answer any questions. Is there any discussion or questions at this point?
I have just a question.
Go ahead, Councilmember Ekstrom.
Okay, I can't, I've driven past that propane tank, I don't know how many times, but it does seem a little bit close to the building. I don't know how risky that is as far as, and increasing it to 1,000 gallons, or, if it goes boom, is, the radius of 1,000 gallon propane tank, does that just make the boom much bigger? And I don't know about, the kind of safety studies about how, I've never seen a propane tank explode, although my neighbor Ray Carling was, who used to own Ogden Propane, was injured in, that type of, but that's been years and years and years ago. And I'm sure there's much more safety features on these tanks now, but I guess I'm just curious, wondering about the safety of these new tanks and their proximity to the buildings, and if we actually have a code for, I'm assuming we have a code. When I was reading it over, I didn't see it, but for a distance from the feet, yes, it is. But so
yeah, I think there was a drawing there, but Mr. Hess, would you like to answer Councilmember Ekstrom's question? That are we in compliance with safety measurements regarding propane and tank size?
That question, I don't know if Councilmember Barker could answer that from the fire department standpoint. That's, I believe, there's industry regulations. It's shown by the industry folks who would be able to replace that tank for Mr. Child, but it's not codified in our city ordinance how close to an existing building you can have a propane tank for various sizes. So I don't know if that's a fire code issue or a building department building code issue in the building permit, but it's not one that we addressed at the Planning Commission.
Good question. Then, do you have any comments on that, Councilmember Barker, from the fire marshal standpoint?
Yep, there is a code. It's the NFPA National Fire Protection Code. I think it's 58. There is a code that specifies all of that. And the good thing is, the state fire marshal's office likes jurisdiction over propane, so I have nothing to say about it, but it is highly regulated and they are in compliance where they're putting it. They have to be, I think off the top of my head, they have to be 20 feet from a building. But
your knowledge, not having jurisdiction, but you're saying there is a regulation and this is in compliance.
Yep. And so the state fire marshals will actually be the ones that make sure everything's done correctly. But for peace of mind, if it does go boom, we'll know.
Whether it's 500 or 1,000, we'll know, right?
Yep, you'll know.
Okay. Thank you for that insight, Councilmember Barker. Are there any further questions? Does that answer your question, Councilmember Ekstrom?
yes, it does. Thank you for that.
All right, so council, we're addressing ordinance 2022-05. There's a motion and a second. This being the amendment of an ordinance would require a roll call vote. So I will proceed. Councilmember Ekstrom.
Muted.
Yes, there we go.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
And Councilmember Dalpez.
Yes.
Motion to approve ordinance 2022-05 passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 9.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes,
Real quick.
Councilmember Barker.
just to clarify, propane tanks are designed that if they are going to explode, they're going to release all the propane and it'll be on fire. So it'll be a torch, and they're designed to do that so they don't explode. So they're not going to
Okay.
explode.
All right, thank you.
They're very safe.
Thank you very much for that input. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 9 now, council, which is a discussion or action to consider an ordinance to rezone city-owned property to the civic zone. This also was in your packet. We've had numerous discussions on the civic zone. So Kai, would you like to give us a overview of your presentation and let the council ask any questions after we make the motion? Kai?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So what we have here is this is a rezone to the civic zone. This is the old public work site, the police department, city hall, and the senior citizen building, as well as a parcel or a lot that has been created as part of an administrative subdivision that was put forth by the city. Additionally, we're including some parcels where the future police station will go. You can see here on the exhibit the properties that are to be rezoned to the civic zone. The Planning Commission met 2 weeks ago and put forth a positive recommendation for the rezone of this unanimously. And that's all I have. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, do you have any questions for Kai on his presentation or information in the packet before we seek a motion? I believe our previous discussions, the civic zone was properly approved. We're just now trying to get all the city properties in there so we're in compliance with the intent of that ordinance. Any questions for Kai? Kai, you did a fantastic job in your staff report, apparently. So there are no questions from the council. So council, I would be looking for a motion to approve ordinance 2022-06, which is a motion to approve a rezone of city-owned properties to civic zone as outlined on the map before you. Do we have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilmember Swanson?
I'll move that we approve ordinance 2022-06 as described.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 2022-06 as presented this evening. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Second by Councilmember Severing. Council, do we have any further questions or discussion? I do not see any, so this being an ordinance, I'll take a roll call vote. Start with Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpaz.
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
And Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Okay, so you have the ordinance before you. The motion to pass ordinance 2022-6 has passed unanimously. Let's move on to item number 10, council. This is an agreement related to agreement 03-2022. This is in regards to a offer for a property purchase agreement for land located at approximately 457 East, 2600 North. This is the property just west of the library where the Trimble property home sat. This will be led by John Call, our city manager and attorney. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Council, this is a piece of property where you held a public hearing and declared this as surplus. And so again, as a reminder, this is the property we're talking about. City Hall is located just east of here. The library is the building on the just to the right-hand side of that red box. There is still some information that is not being included in the public discussion, and that is for commercial protection reasons. The idea being that the group, so the group who would like to buy it is actually Phil Child. Phil runs the Ace Hardware, and he's looking to bring in another business on this property. But we're not publicly disclosing the name of that business until Phil and his group are ready to discuss that. But the city did have this property appraised, and the offer has come in at the appraised value. So it is something that essentially the council is receiving a value based upon an independent appraisal. That independent appraisal came in at $21 a square foot. That is the cost that is the amount that's being recommended. The things that are a little unique about this agreement, and there are some things that the council has talked about, but since it's a agreement for the purchase or sale of property, it does need to be discussed in a public meeting. And those things are located in the addendum. So the standard purchase contract is a state form that's used that identifies the amounts and things like that. And then the addendum is where we have kind of the nuances. And that is specifically the things that the council had talked about, and the things that in me working with Phil Child, we have worked out an agreement on, is that Phil and his group will buy the entire parcel that the city is selling, the full 1.266 acres, by December 31st, 2027. And at this moment, they will only be buying roughly the half acre that would be the property they need for the current business that they're looking to locate on the property. The agreement that is before you anticipates that another agreement would be signed that would execute that purchase requirement, because when a contract is signed, every previous unwritten agreement goes away, and even written agreement. So you have to create a new agreement. Sorry, it's attorney speak. But we will work on the subdivision to make sure that we've got the parcel divided in the exact way that it needs to be for Phil and his team to buy the property they need now. And then there'd be another lot to the south on this piece. Sorry, I've got to switch back and forth. So there'd be another property on the south, approximately, I shouldn't have used red, I should use a different color, but approximately this property would be purchased at a later date, sometime in the next 5 years. Sorry, I shouldn't have. Sometimes using the annotating makes things more complicated. And that's what this section number 3 talks about, that second agreement that would make it clear that Phil is required to purchase that second property. The fourth part deals with when that property is developed. The city is required by our ordinance to finish installing landscaping, or not landscaping, but curb and gutter along the street, which is 475 East. So Phil and his team will install, sorry, I need to find a color that works really good on this map. There's just too many colors going on. Phil and his team will install sidewalk in this area, and then the city would install everything south of that at our expense to the senior center, where we need to finish the sidewalk as part of the subdivision. But the contract anticipates that we would work together and use the same contractor to do that work, so that the sidewalk matches and everything's okay. And then we do have a provision in the agreement that gives both the city and Phil and his team the chance to get out of the agreement. The idea being that if the anticipated business is not brought to the city for approval, or the city does not give approval, meaning site plan and approval, that either party can cancel if that happens. So if the city does not get the business we've been promised, we can cancel the land sale. And if Phil does not get approval for the site plan and the elevations, then he has the option to cancel the agreement. The reason why that's important for the city is that it makes it clear that, you know, that the city is part of the reason we're selling the property is for the business that we anticipate coming. But it also is helpful for Phil and his team because there is at least one ordinance that we will need to be coming to the council to request a change on to get this business approved. And that is our ordinance currently prohibits using too much white on a building. And with this particular business, they have a very specific design model that includes some white tile on the exterior that we there might be a way in looking at the ordinance that it can be approved, but I think at this point we'd like to make sure the council's aware that we probably might anticipate a zone text amendment coming to the council, allowing for buildings under a certain size to have a certain percentage of their building to be white material, whether it's a stucco, a tile, or metal. But that's something that I think the council would need to be aware of and know that that's going to come back as part, or likely will come back as part of the site plan approval, that we would need that amendment. So those are the 5 provisions. Is there?
John, I think there's another provision that's very important for the council to be aware of. We have a full price offer on this, but the city has an obligation to get that in a buildable condition. At this point in time, we have no idea what that is. To get it down to what we think the true market value is for that piece of property, I just want to point this out, is there's a ceiling on how much, because the last thing I think we want in this thing is to find out that it's, you know, $600,000 or $700,000 situation. But you can see there is a reasonable cost on it that we've deducted. I hate for Mr. Child to find out that he's got $1 million on top of this. So that's a concern I have is, you know, should we and could we get an estimate of the cost to protect basically both parties here? I think, John, we've got soil samples. Did we get the results of those?
I haven't seen the report. Lauren is on here. Oh, no, not anymore. He must have had to. Oh, no, he is. But Lauren, I'm not sure if he's seen those. But we haven't, we've gotten kind of an initial bid from one, but we're looking for a couple more before we really know what the cost is going to be.
And then the other question I have is, I'm assuming Mr. Child would sign a personal guarantee in regards to the purchase of that second piece of property, so that we know that that whole piece is encompassed and taken care of. Because I think the last thing we want to do is have the front taken care of and then have a back piece that the city really then becomes almost responsible for development because of the there.
Lauren just told me we haven't gotten the full report back yet.
Okay,
and I think with your comment about the personal guarantee, is that something that we would want to add to this bullet point 3? Right now it says to the fullest extent.
It says shall execute, but there's, what are the consequences? I guess you got a contractual violation, but there's no consequences if he doesn't buy that last parcel. I'm confident he will, but I would suggest that we get Mr. Child's personal guarantee in regards to the purchase of that second parcel.
So
Well,
go ahead.
Well,
Do you have
Mayor,
a
I was
question?
just- Yes, sir.
Councilmember Severing?
Well, do we also have it in the contract that Mr. Child is purchasing the additional ground for the same $21 per square foot?
John?
So that's the way the agreement is written, that the entire property, the 1.266 acres, times the $21 a foot is what gives us the contract amount of 1.160 million.
Okay.
But you are right, Councilman Severing, that when we do this second agreement, when we parse it off into the two different agreements, that we will make sure that the $21 is included, or the remaining, all of the remaining value is tied up into that second parcel.
Right. That's what I was actually thinking on that addendum, because I don't see that on that addendum. So just curious.
And John, I think it's, just to clarify the council too, the $275,000, the complete excavation would be done on the entire parcel. The 1.226 acres, the 275 represents the whole amount, and that would be done up front so that the second parcel is ready to build upon. This is.
Yes, you are correct, Mayor.
Because I'd hate to spend the 275, 790, so to speak, on the one parcel, and then not have the second buildable. So I just wanted to clarify that. And John, you're talking about this not closing until, I mean, that's just on the second piece, isn't it? The closing date?
Correct. So the current closing, yes, the current closing date is set as the settlement deadline in the agreement for July 1st, 2022, which is this year.
For the first parcel. Just wanted to make sure that that was clear in everybody's mind that he is closing on that. What other questions, council, do you have?
I have a question.
Councilmember Ekstrom, please.
Okay, so a couple of questions. First was the first plot that's being purchased. Right now it looks like it's two lots. Are we combining those? And then my understanding when we had the previous discussion was that the orientation of the business was going to be west. Is that correct? And it's going to cover both of those current lots that way?
Clarify, but I think it's only going to cover the first parcel he's buying.
So this map is the old map that was used for showing the original property lines, not the new subdivision lines.
Okay.
So the black lines are going to go away, and there will be a new property line that goes across the property. I mean, roughly in that area, with the business that's been anticipated being located in the north half and the future property in the south of that blue line.
Okay, that was just my question. Because the lines that are showing on this particular photo are not necessarily indicative of what is actually being divided up right now. So is the intention still to have that business oriented west?
Yes, my understanding, and we do have Phil on he could probably answer some of these questions too if the council would like.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Phil and hear his plans. Just my second question is that 275,000, like, where did we get that number? Is that an estimate that we got from a contractor? Or are we just kind of picking something?
Yeah, we did get that as just an initial estimate, but also it kind of brings it down to the property value that we really think is in the marketplace to get that on a buildable situation. John would remind each of us that we do owe, I think, WACOG. Is it WACOG, John?
Yes.
That we owe the money for on the back parcel.
So this exhibit's a good example. The WACOG is who helped us buy the property that's north of the black line. That I just kind of highlighted. So on that property, we are required to give WACOG some money back. On everything south of that line, the city gets the full amount as a general fund revenue.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Ekstrom?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I think we do have Phil, but I do believe that there was still a west facing. So I don't know, Phil, if you'd like to make any comments without kind of revealing too much in regards to what's going to go there. Would you like to make any comments, Phil?
Can you hear me, Mayor Berube?
Yes, sir, Mr. Child, we can hear you.
All right. Do you want me to state my name? Philip Child, resident of North Ogden, 1353 East, 2450 North. Without revealing too much, on that top piece, the building would go from in between 475 East and the drive that goes down into Smith's, into my A store. The front of the building would face west, with the back of the building would face east, with a drive-through. And I don't know how much more detail you want me to go into, but yeah, that's the way it would face. It'd go from east to west, but the front being the west part of the building.
So that's your question, Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes, I maybe a little more clarification. If the drive-through is going to be really kind of a long drive-through, I know like Fizz had to add like a second lane. Is the drive-through going to be on the north side, the south side, the east side, west side? How is that going to kind of fit? Trying to picture traffic flow.
Yeah, the drive-through would start on the obviously the east side, and it would wrap around to the north side with 3 pull-aheads.
Okay. Well, it's exciting.
Very exciting. I look forward to it. So I'm very excited about it. And
Okay.
I think this would be something that would be good for the community.
All right, council, while we have Mr. Child on the line, do you have any further questions? I see none for you, Mr. Child, but do you have any questions for John on the agreement?
No, I think everything's fine. As you know, I have full intentions of buying the second piece as well. I'm okay signing a personal guarantee on that, if that's what you'd like. Yeah, no, I don't have any questions. John and I have been working very well. He's been great to work with, and you as well, Mayor Berube, and also the city council. And thank you for considering this. Again, I think this is something that I'm excited about, and I hopefully the community of North Ogden will be just as excited about it as well. And so again, thank you for all that you have done so far to make this a step closer.
This would be, I think, in the opinion of the council in our meetings, would be a great addition to North Ogden. And Mr. Child, we are appreciative of the fact of your continued investment in North Ogden City to serve the residents and make it a continued great place to live.
Yeah,
I think many of our residents will find when you get this done that it will be a great addition. And
for sure, it'll be a great asset. And again, thank you for all that you have done. And like I say, I'm excited about it. So that's all I could say.
Okay. All right, council, any further questions for John? John, do you have any further comments? If so, now would be the time.
So council, if you're okay, what we'd be looking for is a motion to approve the agreement and authorize the mayor or myself or both of us to execute the document filling in the appropriate dates and times and things. And then I think for our residents' sake, I imagine that once the agreement is signed, we should probably see a site plan fairly soon. And I think there'll be an official announcement fairly soon on what business is coming and why this is probably a really good thing for North Ogden. So,
And I think the key will be is nailing down that $275,000 maximum.
Yeah.
Maximum number there. And then, you know, if it exceeds that, we'd have to probably have a redress here. So council, we've heard from the applicant, we've heard from John. This was also in your packet. I'd be looking for a motion at this time to proceed with authorizing agreement A03-2022 as presented here, with the caveat authorizing the signing of the agreement by John or myself or both, with the filling in of the appropriate times and dates. Do we have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilmember Ekstrom.
I move that we approve agreement A03-2022 as outlined, stipulating the mayor and or the city manager, John Call, as representatives authorized to execute the agreements.
Okay, we have a motion. Council, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dowpaz. Is there any further discussion? This being an agreement, I will proceed with a roll call vote. Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes.
Councilmember Severing.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
The council will vote unanimously to approve agreement number A03-2022. Thank you. And good luck to you, Mr. Child, on your endeavor. We'll look forward to proceeding along. All right, we'll move on now to item number 11. This will be presented by Mr. Call, our city manager and attorney. He has some additional information he'd like to share with us about our discussion on the city vision and goals, and maybe some information on the recent survey. So John?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have two things to share with the council. This obviously is not a decision item tonight, it's a discussion. The first one to share with you is your official results. I believe you saw this in an email, but we're showing it again. That basically shows, of those 15 priorities that the council identified, which ones were the highest priority and which ones were the lowest priority. It's an average score. We didn't include names of which council member voted which way to keep it anonymous, and but essentially this column averages out the scores across the 6 council members, and then it's ranked highest to lowest, with the highest priority being the public safety building and the lowest priority being the development of the Arts Guild and the enhancement of meaningful activities. And that, to be clear, I know that, you know, for everyone who's listening, this does not mean that the lowest priority in the city is the Arts Guild, but what it means is, of these 15 items that were identified as the highest priority in the city, that was the 15th on the list. And then with that discussion, you know, the council had asked that we reach out to the public and get some feedback from them on how they would rank that same list of items. And so we have those results that I don't believe the council has seen yet. And it actually is a little bit closer. The idea being that the way that the individuals they were asked to rank from 1 to 10, the number of items that were listed, and then a total score was given for each of those items. And then from that, we took an average to see which one ranked the highest, or I guess the lowest. So, and then we anyways, we redid the calculation, but essentially what is saying is, the residents or the people who took the survey, so 103 of them, said the focus on public safety building is number one. Number two is growing the police force, including code enforcement. And number three on their list was development of commercial corridors. To compare that to the council's list, completion of the public safety building was number one, so same for both. Number two, maintaining a growing police force was the same. And then the commercial corridors was number 6 on the list for the council, number 3 on the list for the residents. There is a little bit of a difference though, in the sense that the grouping seems a lot closer on the resident side than it does on the council side. But you can see that they've gone through and basically identified their top priorities as well for those who responded. And then we also asked them an open-ended question that said, what else would you like the council to focus on? The idea being that they might have something that, you know, from staff and council we missed. And so I think that there's a few people who, or there might be some good ideas in here. In fact, I'm sure there's good ideas, right? But we can go through each of these and talk about them, or we could send them out to the council. I think that as we move now into the budgeting process, so there's only two financial seasons in the city. One is audit season and the other is budget season. And so with the request from the council, the budget is supposed to be focused on accomplishing these goals that the council has set for us. I'm going to go back to this other screen, but accomplishing these 14 items that the council has set are, in addition to our normal stuff, these are the priority that we're focusing on. And so I guess the real question is does the council feel okay with your results? Do you want to have a further discussion about how the citizen results come in? And then I'll send this to you right after this meeting so you can see the open-ended responses. You know, here's someone who said they want to see another large grocery store, shops and eateries to accommodate the city. And so I think that, you know, there's a lot of things that are open for discussion, and it's really kind of open-ended on council. Where do you want us to go from here? Do you want us to continue looking at more things, or do you want us to start focusing on those priorities and starting to assign dollars and plans for how we're going to accomplish those goals?
Well, John, this would be interesting because the council approved 2 requests for grant money for ramp, one for trailheads and one for the amphitheater. If you look at those, both of those are way down the list. I mean, you start getting a real gap after about item number 6. You jump from you know, 533 to a 650, and then, you know, from there you're going all the way up to a 10.
And you're right, Mayor. And we also have also budgeted money for, I mean, I would argue as well that there's been money budgeted for the top three things on the council's list, with the idea being that number 2, which is maintaining a growing police force. I think the council's doing more than just budgeting money. I think we're looking at culture, and we're looking at, are there things that don't cost the city money that we can provide? But I think you're right. There are budget requests that tie into these that maybe are not tracking in the order of priority.
Council, any comments from Mr. Call? I think it would be good for you to have copies of both these, particularly I think looking at what the citizens have to say. Some of theirs are not related to this. Some are general comments as I've read through them. But I think it would be good to kind of look and make sure that you don't feel like we've left anything off the list that would be important. Councilmember Swanson, I see your hand up. Do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. John, can you go back to the citizen responses? I'm curious how it is that the range of scores is from 4.3 to 4.8, and the range of scores on the councils is between 1 and essentially 10. Did the citizens rate these where they could rate, say, a 5 on multiple items? Or as the council did, where we used, there was only one thing that could be number 1 as we each went through the list, and one thing that could be number 2. I'm a little curious how we ended up with these numbers in basically a half-point range.
I'm not a statistician. I can give you my opinion. And I think it's that the council was more aligned going into the ranking because most of the things that showed up on the list, the council had discussed 2 or 3 times before we ever put it on a list. And I think the residents are coming from a position where they're bringing their own unique experience in, and it's also a larger group, and so things are naturally going to even out a little more.
Sure.
But I think you're right. Statistically, it feels really close on the citizen side compared to the council side.
Right. Looking at the citizen side, there's overall, when you look at the aggregate of the responses, of all responses, there's really very little difference for any of them, a 4.3 to a 4.8, which is a very minor difference in overall opinion versus what you see on the council. So the residents did then use just one once, 2 once, 3 once. Everybody filled it out the same way.
Yeah, they were ranking 1 through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they could place a 5 on all of them if they wanted. Versus we asked to rank them, 1 through 14, Phil. So I think your point is well taken.
So the residents could put a 5 on all of them?
That's my understanding.
Then how
they were rating each one from a 1 to 10, weren't they, John?
Katie's the one who put it together, and I thought it was a pre-filled form that said they had to vote. They had to rank them 1 to 10. We ended up combining some of them because we didn't have 10 slots. We had more than 10, but my understanding, and I can double check with Katie tomorrow and let you know, council, but I believe it was set up as they had to do 1 was 1 was number 2, 1 was number 3.
I think before we spend a whole lot of mental power trying to sort through this, I think we ought to know the answer to that question. Because if they could give the same rating to every item on the list, that certainly makes it challenging to make a comparison between the two. Whereas the opposite, if they could use only 1 rating per question, then we can make some comparisons. But I'd like to know that before we get too deep into it.
And that may have been the intent, but as I looked at the survey, I don't think there was anything from prohibiting them. I mean, we even had that to some degree, John, in the council rankings, right?
Yeah, and I just pulled up the survey on the website, and you are correct, Mayor. You can see here, I've clicked 1 in each of these boxes. And so you could see, it only let you pick 1 number for any one, but I could have submitted everything with a number 1. So you're correct, Mayor.
That was just simply a lucky guess on my part, John. I don't.
So really the residents were saying, if you had someone say one is that someone voted as 2 and someone voted as 8, then you're naturally going to end up with a number that approaches the 5 kind of medium range.
That
Well,
makes
instead
it
of ranking,
problematic
this was
for
a
us.
degree of importance, so to speak, instead of a ranking like the council did.
Right.
I would also point out that, we had 103 responses out of 6,000, almost 7,000 households. So I think Councilmember Dalpaz would conclude that it's not a statistically accurate sample by any means.
Yeah, the other thing is, Mayor, when we did when the Parks and Recreation team did their survey, they had about 275 responses, I think it was. So there's definitely a chance that we could have got it out to more, but I think it's some interesting initial data for sure.
Well, John, why don't we get this out to the council so they can digest it, knowing now what we've got.
Okay.
Just to see if that input from the citizens has any weight on maybe the council liking to change the ranking we have. For instance, the financial plan really folds into most of these things. If we're going to develop parks, we've got to have money to do it, etc. But why don't you get that out, let them read the comments, and then we can come back, John, and address this to see if the council has any change in priorities as we enter into the budgeting season, which is upon us, by the way. We spent some time today going through that. And as soon as we get these numbers, John, we talked about today, just as a reminder, we need to get a meeting set with Councilmember Swanson to make sure he feels like we're in compliance with the council agreed to do in regards to budgeting this year, in regards to the numbers. So,
okay.
Does that sound fine, council, to get this out? I think to Councilmember Swanson's point, there's some information to digest here, and I don't think we'll be getting anything on that would be pertinent tonight in our meeting. Does that sound okay, council?
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we appreciate the citizens who participated in this. You can see that we've got really 2 different numbers. We ranked them in priority. They so these could have all been of equal importance to numerous. All right. John, do you have anything else that you'd like to add in regards to that, or you want to save your comments for the wrap up with council, mayor, and staff comments?
I'll save the rest of my comments.
Okay. Any other questions, council, before we move on to item number 12? This would be reports from Councilmember Severing on police and Councilmember Ekstrom on public works. Let's start with you, Councilmember Severing, on your report for police.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And thank you, JD, for pointing that out. Chief Quinney and I spoke, and I shared. I was very intrigued by the citizens' response point 2, that they're interested in making sure that we have a well-developed police force. And so happy to report that we did lose a few officers here about a month and a half ago. And there was a recommendation that we do some sort of bonus system, kind of a sign-on bonus, and Mayor maybe jump in as needed to clarify it for me, but also a referral system. And even though we did lose 3 officers here about a month and a half, we've since replaced those 3 officers with 2. And those 2 officers are experienced officers bringing with them the experience that they've had. Mayor, do you want to add anything? I'm not completely, I don't remember every detail, I should say, of the bonus kind of system.
Yeah, let
With-
me just
Would you please?
add some additional color on that for you, Councilmember Severing.
Thank you.
This council made a decision about a month ago, I think it is now, that we would, instead of playing defense all the time, we would go on offense based upon the rankings of maintaining and developing and growing a police force in our city. As a result of that, the council authorized that we paid a retention bonus to our existing officers. No use continuing to hire if we can't retain what we've got. So we offered a $5,000 retention bonus to our existing officers. We offered a sign-on bonus, or a recruiting bonus is what I would call it, of $5,000 for any new officer with experience that came over in a lateral move. We also offered a $1,000 bonus, referral bonus, to any employee in the city who would refer an officer that was hired and passed their tests and came onto the city's force. Two of these officers, the two officers were hired, I understand it came from referrals from employees within the city. And we've had actually some additional interest, is my understanding, in coming to work for our city. I've had a chance to briefly speak with the officers, and I can tell you their initial response was they're very impressed with our department. They're excited to come to work in North Ogden City. And I would say this, council, the investment you authorized to retain and attract our officers, I think, is more than paid for it. I would add too that we were able to not only hire 2 officers, but we did retain another officer who had been contemplating leaving. So this program that you very rightfully, in my opinion, approved has resulted in 3 officers, 1 staying and 2 coming on board. We all know the cost of hiring and training new officers. It far exceeds the amount that was invested by you as a council. And that's what I like to see. I call it a good return on investment. That'd be the color I'd ask Councilmember Severing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chief Quinn wanted me to indicate that the design phase for the new public building is moving forward. And the hope is to begin actually moving dirt here within about the next 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks. The department actually completed a taser recertification this week. That's something that has to be done once a year. I'm not as brave as Phil, because as I recall, Councilman Swanson at one time actually allowed them to tase him. And that's not something I'm willing to do. They're also the committee that is working on appointing the next judge for the Justice Court is doing interviews this week, so we've moved forward on that. And also the chief asked that in the new building that there would be a room that would be available for some fitness for the officers. And he was able to obtain so far a $1,000 grant from the Jason Reed Foundation, and apparently he is a fallen policeman that died. And so they're looking for an additional $5,000 to $8,000 to be able to equip that particular room in the public safety building. So I'm just grateful. I get a chance tomorrow morning at 10 to ride with the officers for most of the day tomorrow. And then Friday night at 8 o'clock, I'm beginning a evening ride. And I'm grateful for the officers and their willingness to protect and support the citizens. So that's my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. And I would just once again encourage you and all council members, as this budgeting season comes about, that you get very involved with your assigned department head, and make sure that the money we're spending is tied to outcomes in the city. Just one piece of color before we move on to Councilmember Ekstrom is that the Judicial Committee will be making a recommendation of 3 qualified candidates to be the judge. They'll make that recommendation to me. I will then select one and come to you for approval. It's been quite a while. The state, I think, didn't get on this as quickly as possible. It's been almost 8 months, and they just had their first meeting last week. Our citizens involved in that I believe you approved, this as a reminder, were Judge Brent West and Susan Kilborn, who is an attorney and a federal investigator. So I think we're well represented there. Councilmember Ekstrom, please.
Certainly. I have actually met with Dave and his team going over the preliminary budget requests that they're going to be having. Just a little bit of kind of background. I think I'm just still getting up to speed on how Public Works all works, for lack of a better word. But one of the several of the requests in the sewer department had to do with measuring output, like how much we're actually sending to the sewer. But currently, the rates that we are charged are tied to property values and not output. And now, Mayor, are you and Phil both on the sewer board? Is that?
No, Phil would probably be better serving there, but I'm the appointed representative from the city, and basically that is correct. Our fees are based upon assessed value of the properties and population. It has nothing to do with the outflow. That has been brought up by every mayor over the last 15 years, but Ogden City has the right to veto that because they have more members on there. And the latest discussion I had was, look, we're spending a lot of money relining these pipes and controlling our flow, but I would say the chances are 0 or below that with Ogden City having veto power, that will change, because think about their assessed values versus ours or Pleasant View or others. But there is a discussion about giving credit, nothing approved, but there is about giving some type of benefit or credit to those cities who are doing pipe relining. Okay. Because if all cities don't do that, and we continue to shove all this flow into the system out there, then the sewer board's going to have to allow expansion of the plant. And that's a lot of money. So if we can first look at controlling flow, hopefully that would prohibit expansion of the plant. So yeah, it's kind of a crazy thing. It's very unfair in my opinion, because a house in Pleasant View or North Ogden of the same design that would be sitting maybe in Ogden City or far west or whatever, there's a whole different assessment, and that really has nothing to do, in my opinion, with sewer flow.
No, they've just made it a progressive tax. That's just,
well, just so you're aware,
it's a political thing.
Yeah, just so you're aware, there is a proposal, it was in a public hearing, of a 20% increase in taxes that'll be paid directly by the residents on their property tax, and an increase in our fee that will have to be passed through the citizens in their monthly bill. So it's a crazy thing, but our community, our county's growing, and I guess there's just more sewage coming from all the discussions that are going on.
There we go. All righty. Well, excellent. We'll be looking at that more closely, of course, as we get it further into the budget. But just thought that was kind of an interesting kind of what my daughter says sucks to suck. But
Yep, that's exactly right.
So, all right. So the report from Dave is that, we haven't had a whole lot of snowy weather. So they're starting on their spring projects in the departments. We're still praying for some snowy weather, at least some spring precipitation. At least I am still praying. So they started maintenance on all of their mowers and pruning equipment. They've rebuilt 4 PRVs, which he has to keep reminding me are pressure reducing valves, which is controlling the flow when it comes downhill. And they're able to do some building maintenance and on the well and the pump houses also. And, of course, in their budget is, part of our priority to expand our water capacity. So getting our wells bigger and storage units bigger, and maybe even drilling some new wells. We've got those preliminarily in the budget also. So that is the report from Public Works.
And just as a reminder, as you know, and John gave me some additional insight on this the other day in a discussion, our impact fees on water, I think, are still in the negative. Used to be somewhere around $1 million. So we haven't collected enough impact fees to really keep up. But as John said, we've got to stay ahead of development. And so, as we look at this, it's going to be a real interesting financial decision, but something if we're going to have continued growth. We've got 2 wells that are capped, that need to be uncapped, probably drilling, and then the proposed new $1 million water tank just off 2100. So lots to talk about financially coming up. Councilmember Ekstrom, we'll appreciate your financial analysis and recommendations. Thank you very much for those reports. We'll now go then, council, to public comments. Item number 13, John, if you would watch to see if any of our residents, our citizens would like to make a comment. Once again, citizens, if you just raise your hand, John will then allow you to speak. And once again, up to 5 minutes, and state your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden. John, if you'd let us know.
Yep. Nobody yet.
We'll give just a few minutes. Sometimes it's a little tricky getting signed on and raising your hand.
We do have a hand from Brenda Ashdown.
Brenda, welcome. Thank you. Go ahead. Brenda? John, do we have a...
She's unmuted herself. I'm not sure why we can't hear her.
You can also use the chat function if you'd like, Brenda. Unfortunately, we're not able to hear your comments. Anything, John, you see that could...
Let me try removing permission and doing it again. Try unmuting yourself again now, Brenda.
Maybe she can't hear us. Brenda, you are muted.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's made a comment here. She says, "Oh, bummer. I'm just rubbing it in that the public comments are 5 minutes instead of 3." That was a result of reviewing our current council procedures, which after reviewing myself and council, hopefully you received my email. There's numerous things in there that need to change, like for instance, a meeting can't go by past 9:30 without specific approvals, etc., which may be good, but I'm not sure we need that much detail. So, all right, Brenda, we got your chat, and we always love to have you rub things in. So stay with us, and hopefully we'll get back to in person here soon. Anything else, John?
No other raised hands.
Okay, then let's go on to council, mayor, and staff comments. Let's start with council. I think one thing that we did say we would discuss this evening, and hopefully, I think it was Mrs. Ashworth. Hopefully she stayed with us to hear our discussion on that, but what else do you have, council, that you've heard from on citizens that may need to be addressed? Anything?
Mayor,
Council member Severing?
we just need to have either directions on how to help Randy Bird in his situation. So I'm recommending that as part of our discussion.
Okay, and what would you like to say about that? Because I think we have an answer, and what he's referring to is Mr. Bird was out of town, and while he was out of town, his home experienced a leak. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but that leak resulted in probably 22,000 gallons of water over and above the normal water use in that home. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And he ended up, as you can imagine, with quite a bill. We do have a policy in place on, or similar to the IRS. I hate to compare us, but even if you make a mistake there, they'll give you one-time forgiveness on certain things. So we do have a policy on first link. I had John review that. I think he will see a substantial reduction in his bill as a result of this policy. I think his total bill, I think the water went down substantially to, what was it, 60?
Yeah.
His bill, let's see, his new water portion of the bill would be $65.70 instead of $202. So there'll be a substantial reduction in his bill according to our policy, which I believe we should follow. Otherwise, we get into all these exceptions and then we find ourselves in a spider web. So, but he did make, I think, some very good comments. One is our process now is we go out and we put a door hanger on the front door. Well, if you're like me, I come in through the garage or the man door most of the time. And he suggested that we maybe text or email a link. To do that, we would have to have people opt in if they would like to be subject to this one-time leak waiver. But I think it's a very good comment, but the immediate solution is he will get a substantial reduction under the forgiveness program of first-time leak. Does that answer your question, Blake?
It was absolutely perfect. Thank you. And I agree.
Mistakes do happen. So he's now used his one-time exception. So, and we will pursue his suggestion, which I think is excellent. See if we can figure a way to implement that. Any comments or questions there, council?
I had a comment.
Yes, Mr. Dalpaz.
I think what would be, I think about if I was out of town and I had a leak and got a hanger on my door. If the city were to knock on either neighbor's door to either of the sides of my home, they would know how to get a hold of me. So it would be awesome if we could implement, just a recommendation with the water department. Hey, when you put one of these hangers on a door, could you please knock on the door next to the home just to see if there's a way to get in contact?
That's a good point. I'm hoping that we can do this electronically and save water department people from running around through the city doing door hangers. But in the meantime, good suggestion. Anything else? Council has come up other than the mailbox. Council member Ekstrom.
Okay, just to clarify, is somebody going to inform Mr. Bird about this policy? Is that John going to send out a notice to him? Okay.
Yeah, I think Stacy and our utility building probably will make contact. John, is that correct?
Yeah, we will contact him.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, I just have a suggestion that we go back to having our discussion first and then make a motion. It seems to cause a lot of confusion. So can we just kind of put that Robert's rule to the side and go with the generally accepted plan that we implemented for so long?
And I do like that too better, Councilmember Ekstrom, but I would suggest this uses a motivation for the council to review all those, and let's make all the changes at one time.
That was really the only one that I found really onerous. I mean, the rest of them, it's like, okay, that's.
Well, I think there's numerous ones that, need. Now, I'm talking about our current procedures.
Oh, right.
Our policies and procedures as we currently have them.
Mhm.
I prefer, as you suggested, but that would be a council decision that would be implemented in our policies and procedures. So I would like to use that as a motivation for the council to read those and get comments back to John on all changes in the procedures and clarifications we may need. But I agree. I'm with you.
Yeah, should we do that as like an agenda item and discuss it in council, or do we just want to send some suggestions to John, have him review them, and then he can send us?
I'm for all efficiency and effectiveness. So what I would suggest is please read through those. If you have comments, give them to John. He will then come with recommended changes and new procedures, and we can have the discussion then. How's that?
That's great. I like that.
But I'm with you. I'm just trying to do my job.
Absolutely, and you're doing an admirable job of it. It's kind of pain to have to follow all the rules. The other thing that has been just mulling around in my head is just the issue with the sidewalks. I mean, have we reached a point in the city that we really just need to have sidewalks everywhere in North Ogden, and that we have the special improvement districts? And I don't know how the collection goes for this, if we tack it on so that there's a special kind of assessment done for anybody that does not have a sidewalk in front of their property, and then that goes into it, and and the city is just in charge of getting sidewalks everywhere. I would really like to just see them, especially, and then we can phase them in as far as their installation. But I think in fact, I saw this as a suggestion from one of our residents on our priorities, is getting the safe routes to school. Right. So when I was on the board for Maria Montessori, that was one of my jobs, was to actually plot out a safe route to school and make sure that there were sidewalks, or if there weren't, that we said, well, we don't really have a safe route to school, so that we kind of start there. I know, excuse me, North Ogden Elementary, when I'm driving Felicity to school, there's a big section, and I'm sure JD's seeing it too, because his kids actually walk that. There's no sidewalk, and then we've got moms pushing strollers, and they're getting out in the middle of the road, and it's not really safe.
I think there's two aspects. The safe sidewalk plan, which we do have, we have money, and we get money from the government on safe sidewalks. But I'm glad you brought that up, Councilmember Ekstrom, because you are the assigned council member for Public Works, and this is a Public Works. What's the actual term, John? Public Works
liaison.
No, I'm talking about the policy, the public street standard. So I would ask you to review the Public Works street standards and come back with some items for discussion and recommendations.
All right, I'd be glad to.
So 2 segments: safe sidewalk program, and then street standards as outlined in our Public Works standards.
Okay.
Because I understand right now that's 10 feet along Washington Boulevard. I'm not saying that's the answer, but that is in our standards. And so if you'd review the standards and get back to us on concerns, the triggering events, I think you should look at those on what triggers, people having to make those improvements. And maybe there's some suggestions that will improve streetscape standards and suggestions. So we'll look forward to you bringing that back to us. How's that?
Sounds good.
Perfect. What else do we have, council, before we get into the mailbox discussion?
Mayor,
Councilmember Swanson.
on the water situation, I think we ought to have a discussion with metering that we have that can alert our water department that there is a steady flow through a meter for multiple hours. I think we seriously, in the water shortage that we're experiencing, the drought, we should knock on a door, and if there is no answer to the door, we ought to turn the water off at the street so that that flow stops. And, you know, we can set whether it's a 4 or a 5 or a 6 hour continuous flow, something that would be abnormal for a residence. And then look at turning that water off until they make contact with us, and we can figure out, rather than, you know, 20, 30,000 gallons of water being wasted.
Yeah, in this particular instance, and I think that's something for consideration, Councilmember Swanson. Once again, Councilmember Ekstrom, if you would discuss that with the Public Works Department and get their input. In this particular case, the teenage daughter was at home. So my only concern is, and I guess we do have after hours, but you know, if she comes home at 7:30 at night and the water's off and her parents are out of town, I guess they could contact her, but let's ask, I think, the Public Works Department to look at the whole process and how we can be as informative as possible to help the citizen. But I'm going to go back to the thing as much as we can automate too, because as our city grows, we need to maximize the existing resources we have first before moving on. So excellent comment, Councilmember Swanson. Sounds like you got your work cut out for you, Councilmember Ekstrom, with coming back with some thoughts on how we can handle this more efficiently, but not only that, more effectively. Okay. And I do agree with the discussion, so I'm going to reemphasize that. Discussion first, then motion. Okay. What else do we have? Let's talk about mailboxes. I know shortly after I became mayor, there was a ordinance that allowed for $100 to replace a mailbox, which didn't cover much of anything. And our philosophy at that time was, we caused the problem, we should fix it. We moved that, I think, to $800, which was, we thought, totally reasonable at the time. You've all had a chance to read the email. We have a resident that's indicating, which I'm not challenging, $1,700 to fix their mailbox. Now, some may think I fell off the turnip truck yesterday, but my concern is this, that when someone finds out that the government's paying to repair something, it seems that the cost goes up if it's government related. And I don't think there's any specific standards about fixing a mailbox, as long as it's in the proper place, et cetera, et cetera. So my concern is, do we start repairing these mailboxes ourselves? Do we have some people in Public Works that could repair these? Because that is a lot for a mailbox. And I'm not saying that the citizens are wrong on that, but that's a lot for a mailbox. I mean, you know, that's almost half of what I paid to put, you know, 25,000 bricks on my house when I built it. So let's have a discussion on what your thoughts are. And Councilmember Swanson, let's start with you.
Well, we can get ourselves into an ever escalating trap here. I know that when we increased it before, it was because, you know, the $100 seemed a bit ridiculous. I'm not convinced at the moment that we need to raise it past the 800. I don't know what we do when we can't, well, I don't know. It's a tricky one. I can see both sides of the issue. John, there's no, the city is not indemnified in this instance, correct?
What do you mean that we're not indemnified?
What's the word I'm looking for? Sorry. Post fog.
So the issue we have is from a complete hard-nosed standpoint is people are installing what they consider their personal property, which in reality, in some respects, is now federal property on city property. And some of those mailboxes are installed too close to the road and our plows hit them occasionally. So those are all the things the council has to weigh with is people are required to have a mailbox, but they're not required to have a $2,000 mailbox. And some people install them in ways that don't interfere with our plows. And some people install them in ways where we have to physically move our plow and watch every mailbox because they're in the way. It's just sorry, did that answer your question? Kind of.
Well, it takes muddy water and makes it equally muddy.
Yeah.
I don't know that there is a good answer here. I think one thing that we do need to look at for moving forward for new homes, I would suggest that we set some kind of a standard as to how close to the curb these things can be that falls within the postal guidelines.
John, I thought all new subdivisions had to have the mailboxes, what do they call them, all in one place, and you go open it with the key?
Yeah, the post office is requiring them to do group mailboxes now.
But if I think we should still have a standard. So in this particular instance where this mailbox gets replaced, rather than it being replaced in the exact same spot that is, in my mind, like my own mailbox, too close to the curb, that it would be required to be set back a little bit, but still within the reach that the Postal Service requires.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Swanson, for your comments. Let's go to Councilmember Dalpaz.
I listened back to the previous conversation from the city council the last time it was discussed, and I think the problem is prices have increased. I'm not the one, and I'm not the professional to say how much prices have gone up, but clearly they've gone up past what $800 would cover these days. And I'm kind of the attitude that if we cause the damage, and I would say hats off to Public Works if the individual driver just lets us know and says, hey, just giving you a heads up, I made this mistake. I would rather that than anything. There's been a lot of situations in my career and in my past where, I've been able to own up and say, hey, this is something that I've done, and it might have been thousands of dollars in expenses, but I would rather potentially cover the full cost because I just feel like it's something that we damaged. I do like Phil's thoughts on making sure that we're absolutely positive that we're putting some sort of standard to how far back they are set from the curb, just according to the Postal Service. But I'm kind of the attitude that we caused the damage and that we should be fixing it. I don't know how much this happens per year. That's the other piece that I'm missing. And I'd love to hear if there's some feedback from John or anyone that has an idea.
2 to 3 times a year, we wipe out a expensive mailbox.
Okay. So those are my thoughts.
But here, and I think they're good thoughts from both you and Councilmember Swanson. I guess the question that came into my mind, it's similar to driving a car. To me, if that mailbox was placed in the proper position, and we hit it, then, I'm one that, as you know, I brought up before, if you listen to the minutes, I said, hey, if we broke it, we should fix it. As long as that mailbox was in the right spot. If it was not in the right spot, then I think there's probably liability on both parties, just like in a car accident, right? There's certain liability if you're just almost on the road. I don't know if this mailbox was in its proper place, but I am one, if it was in the proper place and we caused the damage, I'm one that say we should fix it, but I'm still concerned about someone saying, yeah, the city ran over my mailbox, they're going to fix this. Is it really a 1,700, or do we have somebody in the city that can go out there and repair it for $1,000 or 800? I think we have an obligation, even though I believe the citizen was instructed to go get the bids. I think we have an obligation to make sure that we're repairing the property at the best possible price, if that mailbox was properly in its location. Let's go to you, Councilmember Barker.
I agree we should fix it, and I just did a quick Google search. Mailboxes are supposed to be installed 6 to 8 inches from back of curb, according to the U.S. Postal Service. So, I mean, we can make our standard, but the Postal Service kind of trumps our standard if we wanted to go further back. But I also, I know not to put more work on our public works, but I have seen the fine work they've done with their building that houses the garbage cans, the building that's their now break room and other storage facility, and they did the parks, Loman View Park bathroom. Our public works people are really good, and I think they can fix the mailbox if we ask them to. And if not, then maybe we need to get bids and get it fixed.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Barker. Councilmember Ekstrom, please.
I really just echo what Councilmember Barker said. I think we've got some guys in public works with some mad skills, right? They can do a lot of fixing of things. And wow, a $1,700 mailbox. The other thing that it's like, at some level, the homeowner is kind of assuming some kind of responsibility if they want to have a Taj Mahal mailbox. I mean, I know for my neighbors, the mailbox that was constructed was actually required to be a certain way by our neighborhood covenants, right? But if someone else just chooses to build like this fabulous mailbox, I think, again, we have to kind of look at kind of a shared liability responsibility there also. So, I think it's kind of a case by case thing that we're going to have to look at a little bit, just as the example you brought up with the car accident, there's kind of a shared liability happening there. So that's kind of where I've been mulling around. Mayor, you're muted.
My wife would like that. Thank you. Maybe you could give her some input on how to do that. I'm just looking at the pictures that were sent to us. It's really hard to tell, but it looks like that mailbox was right at curb. I can't really tell because I think it was kind of knocked off its foundation. But if you look at the pictures that were submitted, it's sitting right on the curb, and it looks like the foundation was right at the curb. But I don't know how far it was knocked off its foundation. If you see the pictures.
So this is the federal mailbox standard. And it looks like they're measuring from the face of the curb 6 to 8 inches. So I haven't seen those pictures, but and it's measuring to the where the mailbox opening is, not where the mailbox structure is.
This looks like it was all the way in the structure.
Okay.
John. But I think, those are things, I guess the discussion tonight is, do we want someone to review the ordinance that right now limits liability to $800? Frankly, I think, this is citizens' money, and if we've got somebody internally that can repair it and do the right job, I think we ought to at least pursue that. But I'll forward these pictures to you, John.
Okay.
Okay, let's hear from you, Council Member Severing.
Well, I reached out to a contractor friend. He indicated that it would probably be between $800 to $1,200 for a mailbox. But then he did throw in that it kind of depended a little bit on whether they had, a light in the top of it, how big the base of the concrete was. So, that's not too far off from where they were at. I do think I hadn't heard. This is only the second mailbox that I recall discussing on the council. So I think the citizens would kind of find it odd that we cause the issue and then don't pay for it.
Yeah.
My concern would be that, we get the public works guys involved. That takes more of their time, and what kind of liability would we have thereafter if something happens and it doesn't, gets struck again, for example. And then, I was just thinking about the idea that, an owner, I would have no idea if I was building a home, I would have no idea how far back a mailbox would have to be from the back of the curb. So I don't know if a owner should have that kind of shared liability. That would be more of a contractor. And then finally, maybe we just do kind of what they generally do with insurances. If you've got a car that's been wrecked in an accident, generally you get 2 or 3 bids and you pay the least of the 3. So
yeah, I think Blake, just as a reminder, I do think if somebody's going to put a mailbox up, and a lot of these are put up, by the way, after the home is built, there is an obligation for citizens to understand what the rules are. That is not the city's obligation to inform everyone.
Well, I didn't say it was the city's responsibility.
Well, if the citizen, whose responsibility is it then, I guess, is my question, for people to know where to put their mailbox?
Well, my guess would be, Mayor, quite honestly, of the 5, or maybe even you. I mean, did you know how far back?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because my mailbox is in the right place and it's never been hit.
I would just say that the average person, I don't think knows how far back, so they rely on the contractor who's putting it in to put it in right. That's just my point.
And the second thing is, this is at least the 5th mailbox I'm aware of, and we just did one down on 2600. I think it was towards the end of last year. It was a brick mailbox. I think it was actually repaired for less than $800.
Yeah, like I say, Mayor, that's the only one I could remember, Rob McCord's, and this one I can't remember us discussing another one, but that's just from my memory.
My neighbors got wiped out, and yeah, so I'm aware of at least 5 in the 2 years I've been mayor. But appreciate your comments. So we can't make a decision right now. The ordinance stands at $800. If the citizen would like to wait, and councilman would like to put this on the agenda for discussion, then we can. But at this point in time, I don't think we have any option to change the ordinance without handling it properly through the council. So let's get that on the agenda, John. We've had a discussion. People can digest the thoughts that were expressed tonight. And but I'm of the opinion, yeah, if things are constructed right, they're in the right place, it's kind of tough to to break something and not fix it, but you know, what happens if somebody decides to put we have no control, 10,000 Councilman Swanson, somebody puts a big mailbox with a light on top and speakers and blaring music. And I mean, at what point in time does somebody take a risk for putting, and I'm not saying this one's extraordinary, but some people like big mailboxes. Okay, anything else, council, that you've heard from citizens that should be addressed? John, let's move on to you for staff comments.
Okay, I just have a few things. One is, many of you are aware that we are doing all of our building reviews with electronically for our building permits. We've had a lot of good things that have come out of that and some rough things that have come out of that. And so we are learning and growing. But if you do have any feedback, we're currently evaluating the software we're using to see if we pick the right one, and just making sure that we don't get 3 or 5 years down the road and wish we would have, pulled or hit the brake a little early. So if you have any feedback, please let myself or Bryce know. See, we talked about police station. Another thing, the legislature has a lot of things happening right now, and there may be some stuff that comes in the near future from the league asking for some help to push back against some bills. A good example is there's a highly anticipated land use bill. I believe it's Senate Bill or House Bill 34, that as of right now, nobody knows what it looks like except for maybe 8 people in the state. And it is going to be attacking land use authority of cities, most likely. It will be kind of the focus of it. This is, I think, Councilman Swanson, you asked about this bill a few meetings ago. But the people I know who are involved in the process, who are fairly well connected in land use in Utah, they haven't even seen the language of the bill yet. So it's they're kind of worried that it might be an ambush happening the last week of the session. So anyways, if the mayor or I reach out to you, we would appreciate some help in reaching out to our representatives via text or phone call. And then just the last thing, so you're aware of, we are evaluating our hours at the city when residents are showing up and looking at maybe there's a reason to flex our hours, maybe a little earlier in the morning or a little later in the evening, and then maybe shortening an hour on a Friday or something like that. But we'll update you as you hear more. But again, if you know of any concerns or things we should be aware of, it'd be helpful for you to just give us your feedback on that, understanding that once we get all of our information, the mayor and I'll make a decision and hopefully make the right one. I guess if the mayor's involved, we'll make the right one, right, Mayor?
I wouldn't guarantee that, but we'll give it our best shot.
And those are the things I have, except for we will be doing a city team building activity in March, with all the employees. And we will give you more information, invite you to attend that with us, so you have a chance to interact with the other folks who are associated with the city. So
anything to say about Polar Plunge, John?
Oh, Polar Plunge is this Saturday.
I understand that Council Member Swanson will be taking the plunge. Is that correct?
Yes. Thumbs up. And we have several employees who are doing the plunge as well. And there's quite a few people in the community. In fact, Special Olympics has really been excited about how much this has grown. Obviously, they wish it was bigger every year than it is, but they've been getting a lot of good feedback and are seeing this as a good partnership for them and the city. So,
and John, refresh our memory on what time that is.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. So I would encourage you to come down see Councilmember Swanson take the plunge and support him in his efforts there.
And if you are associated with the city, you can get in. But obviously, if you're coming down, we would encourage you to donate to the Special Olympics and participate like anybody else would. You don't have to jump in, but they do typically charge people to come and watch.
Okay. Anything else, council, before we adjourn for this evening? Thank you for your time and service to the city, and there's some assignments that left this evening and some things to digest. Let's make sure we address those as soon as possible, and appreciate your input and your thoughts, and have a good remainder of your evening. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. A second?
Second.
Motion and second. So it's non-disputable motion. So good evening.